Hey everybody, it's Dana. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and blog. Today we're going to be making some distressed rainbow cards. So let's get started. So lately my mood has just been a little bit blah and I've kind of lost my mojo. So I'm going to come back with something that makes me happy, and that's rainbows. I'm going to be using the Deco Foil Transfer Gel. This is the first time I'm going to be sharing it in a video, and I'm super excited. And I'm going to be using the Rainbow Shattered Glass Deco Foil. I have wanted to play with this for quite some time, and I'm super excited to be sharing it with you today. So for my first card, I'm going to use a stencil. The new way I like to put down my stencils is with this gorgeous product that I love that stays on my desk. This is called Pixie Spray. This is the best thing if you want to lay down any stencil. It's a very light tack that you spray on the back of your stencil, and this holds your stencil in place. This is perfect for really delicate stencils, and I love it because it's an easy product to use and it cleans off very nicely. So I went ahead and sprayed on the back of my stencil, and then it just needs to set up for about a minute or so, just so it bonds a little bit, but it's not going to get overly tacky where it's going to rip your paper. Now I can go ahead and grab my paper, and this is Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And I'll go ahead and take that stencil and place it right down on top. Now, what's so great about that Pixie spray is the stencil is not going to move. It's not going to buckle. I don't have to worry about having the tape underneath it to hold it in place. This Pixie spray, you guys, is like a lifesaver for me. I don't know what I did before I had this, besides wasting a whole bunch of tape. Next, I'm going to grab just a scratch piece of paper, and I'm going to grab that transfer gel. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to stir this around a little bit. Now I had a chance to play with this just recently, just not to have a video or anything, just put it on a scratch piece of paper, and I love the consistency of this. It's like almost like a soft melted butter, I guess I want to say. So I'm going to use my palette knife, but I'm also going to use this tool right here, which has now become one of my favorites. That is my stencil pal. And I'm going to just start off by putting some of that product down using my palette knife. Now, I'm not worried about this really being even right now. I'm just trying to get some coverage. And because those polka dots are very big, I just want to make sure I get the product everywhere. Now, this stencil is from Simon Says Stamp, and I believe it's called extra large dots. I will make sure to have all the products that I use listed below. If anything's sold out, I'll label a alternative stamp or an alternative die that you could use. I'm just coming back in, making sure that I get that transfer gel everywhere. Now this transfer gel has to dry. So you can't like put this down and automatically start doing your foil over it because it has to dry. So this probably took about 15 or 20 minutes. Next, I'm just going to wipe off that excess, and then I'm going to come in with that stencil pal. Now this stencil pal is going to help me to create a thin layer of that transfer gel onto my paper. Any extra I have left, I can go ahead and put right back in the jar because we don't want to waste that. Now, I don't want this to be perfect. I want to have some areas that might be a little bit distressed. So I'm going to come back in, add a little bit more of that gel. I'll go back and swipe this one more time. Again, I'm using even pressure on this, but you can see I have some areas that already look like it's dry, and that's what I want. I don't want a perfect layer. I want it to be a little bit distressed. Now I am going to use my finger and scrape back in that product from the top of my lid because I don't want that to get like all gunked up and like ruin my lid when I go to close it. So now I'm just kind of lifting up my paper, trying to see what areas I don't have anything in, and if I can get a little bit more of a distressed texture out of this. So again, I'm coming right back in with that palette knife, and I'm just going to drag it over those larger polka dots. Again, I'm not trying to be too perfect on this, just to get down some of that transfer gel. Again, I will scrape it back off one more time with that stencil pal, lightly going over it. And now I'm going to have some areas that are a little bit more raised, and that's the look I'm going for. I want this to be a little bit distressed. And then again, scooping up that extra, making sure that I put it back in the jar and away from the top of the lid. Now this is perfect. I can go ahead and pull up that stencil. And as you can see, the stencil comes right up, doesn't tear any paper. But I do want to make sure I clean the stencil right away with my palette and my stencil pal. And then I'll set this aside to dry. Next, I'm going to come in again with some Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And I want to do some distress ink blending on this one. So I'm going to grab a scratch piece of paper that has some love all over it. And I'll grab out some rainbow colors. So I have candied apple, carved pumpkin, mustard seed, and then I'm going to have twisted citron, salty ocean, and wilted violet. These are going to be my rainbow colors. Now, each one of them, I do have little daubers for, little blending tools. You don't need to have one for each color. Just when these are on sale, I just kind of scoop them up when I can, and then I just have some extras. Now I'm going to start laying down the Distress Oxide ink. Now you guys have seen plenty of videos with the Distress Oxide inks and how wonderful and easy they are to blend. That's the reason I wanted to use these on my card today, because I'm going to have a great opportunity to blend all these colors together to make me a very gorgeous background. Now I went ahead and sped this up because I'm pretty sure we've all seen blending before, but I want to show you what I do to make sure I kind of get even coverage. I start with my red, and then I flip my paper around and I go into my purple. So this way I have like the end caps on my cardstock, and I can see where I'm putting my color down. So next I'm going to come in with that gorgeous salty ocean right on top of that wilted violet. And I can see like how much room I'm going to have in between for my last bits of color. So next I'm going to come in with that beautiful mustard seed, and you're going to see how gorgeous that blends in with that carved pumpkin. And all you need to do is go back and forth over to blend all the colors together. Lastly, I'm coming in with that twisted citron, and you're going to be able to see between the salty ocean and the twisted citron, it's going to give me like another shade of green, which is going to be a tad bit darker. And that's how I accomplish these rainbows. It's just by continuously blending all of that gorgeous ink out. Now, since that's done, I'm going to grab my water spritzer, put some water into the palm of my hand, and go ahead and drop that down. Next, I'm going to go ahead and get myself a rag, and this is the pink little rag from Pink and Maine. And I'm just going to now spritz that paper and then use my rag just to dot up some of that extra moisture. And I'm really going for it because I want a heavy splattered look on this. And now I can go ahead and put this aside to dry. Okay, next I'm going to bring in one of the toner sheets that Therm has. And these sheets are pure acetate, or clear acetate rather. And they just have toner sheet stripes on it. Again, I'll make sure to link all of my product below. And I'm going to be using that rainbow shattered glass deco foil. Oh, you guys, this stuff is stunning, absolutely stunning. So I'm just making sure I have everything lined up. And next I'm going to go ahead and start heating up my machine. Now I use this one here. This is the Anna Griffin one. I've had it forever. And I'm just going to go ahead and start that heating up. So I like to start it at number 4. And then once that begins to heat up, in order to cut down that foil, I like to use a rotary knife. or a rotary blade. This is one I've had like for quite some time, and I find that is absolutely perfect for trimming down any kind of foil. It keeps me from having to lift up the foil and it rolling on itself. So I keep this on the side of my desk anytime I'm doing anything that has me having to trim down any foil, because you don't want any of this gorgeous foil to go to waste. So using that rotary blade really helps me to be able to save as much of this as I can. So I'll go ahead and trim that off, and you can see how easy it cuts right through the foil. I'll pull that out of the way. Now my machine is heated up, so I'm going to go ahead and flip this over, and I want to make sure I put it into a carrier. Now this carrier came with this mink. It's just a piece of plastic, and I'm just lining up that foil on top. Now I don't want to be too perfect on this. So if I get some buckling, I'm going to be fine with this because I want this to be distressed. Now the lines itself are distressed as well, but I'm going to want a little bit more distressing on this. So I go ahead and let that run through my machine, and then I can pull it out. It is going to be a little bit warm, and I'm going to move my mink machine off to the side so I don't burn myself. And then I can go ahead and take this out of the carrier sheet. Now, if you don't have a carrier sheet, you can just use a folded piece of paper. It works just fine. Now, since I have that out, I can go ahead and just smooth out any areas. And I do see the buckling on there, which that's what I wanted. And look how gorgeous this is. It's absolutely beautiful. Look at that shattered glass on all of those distressed lines. Now, I do have some of the toner, the black toner, still showing, and I'm okay with that because I'm going to be adding a lot of black to the cards I make today. So I'm just going to grab myself a black background, and look how gorgeous that shimmer shows up on that black background. Now, if you wanted to, you could use white, totally up to you, but I just like mixing the rainbow with black. Now, I also have this little piece here that I can use on another card a little bit later. Never throw away those pieces. Now, to get this to stick to my paper, I have the great lines right in the back that I can put my adhesive on to get this to lay onto that black cardstock. I am going to trim down this cardstock, and this right here is the tonic paper trimmer, which is like my absolute favorite paper trimmer right now. So I'm going to cut this down to a size card base, and then I am going to trim it down just a little bit because I don't want this to be too big on that sparkly kind of piece. I just want this to set neatly underneath it. So now, since I have all that trimmed down, I can go ahead and bring back in that other piece, and look how gorgeous that looks on that black. I'm not going to put anything in between any of these. I'm not going to turn this into a shaker card. I just want it to be a nice flat card. Now, to get this acetate to stick to that black cardstock, I'm going to use some liquid adhesive. And I find that if I dot this liquid adhesive onto the acetate, I have a tendency not to have as much, quote, bleed through, where you'll end up seeing it on that black cardstock. So I'm just going in and putting some dots all over that black background. This really is able to hide any of that adhesive. Now, if you wanted to, you could totally use double-sided tape with this, cut it in thinner strips. But I just find if I use the wet adhesive, it gives me a little bit more wiggle room when I place it down to my card panel. So I'll just dot a little bit more on there, and then that's pretty much covered. And now, like I said, using the wet adhesive, this is going to give me a tad bit of wiggle room to get this correct onto this black cardstock. So I'll go ahead and use my grid mat, and I'll go ahead and place that down. And if there's anything hanging off, I can go ahead and trim that down a little bit later. But you can see by using the wet adhesive, it gives me just enough time to shift everything around on that black cardstock. And it's absolutely perfect. Now I'm going to come in with a 110-pound Neenah Solar White, and I use this EK Tools, EK Success, I think it is, scoreboard, and I use the score that it comes with to make the initial score line. But then for me to fold the card, I like to grab out my Teflon bone folder. I find that this Teflon bone folder works a lot better in creasing the sides of my card than the one that actually comes with the scoreboard. That's just my preference. All right, now since I have that done, I can go ahead and put on this piece. Now I do want to trim off a little bit of that black towards the bottom of that card. So again, I'm just going to grab my Tim Holtz trimmer. And again, like I said, this has become one of my favorite trimmers. I use this one more. It sits on my desktop. But if I have to change up to get one that fits larger paper, then I just use my Fiskars one. But this one here sits right on the corner of my desk every single day. Again, I'm coming in with that Nuvo glue and I'm just adding dots. Now, the reason I'm adding dots to this, you might be like, Dana, just put it all on. Like, stop. This, again, just gives me a little bit more wiggle room compared to if I just had it smeared all over. And I find if I do the dots, I don't get a lot of bowing in my paper when I use the wet medium. So now I can go ahead and place that panel down right onto that white card base. And look how gorgeous this is. Now I'm keeping all of the cards really, really simple today because I want the rainbow to be the best accent on this card. So I went ahead and I used the I Love You die. This one is from Simon Says Stamp. I just purchased it and I needed to put this on a card immediately. And then I have these glossy hearts, and these are from Pink and Maine. And I thought they would be so pretty to go along with this I Love You sentiment. Now, this sentiment cuts out the I love you, and then it also cuts out that black shadow piece that you're seeing. So it works perfectly to give me some white from the card base, but it also keeps it consistent with the black in the stripes. So go ahead and line that up right towards, like, right in the middle of my card. And then I'm going to grab just a few of these little hearts because I think they're perfect for this card. And again, I'm not adding any extra color. These are clear, so they're not going to compete with the stripes I already have, but it is going to give me just a little bit of added embellishment to this background. So I'll just pick out a few of these and place them randomly around that card panel. And I can tell you, I really love how this came out. And I think this is a great way to give a masculine card without being over the top glittery. All right, so that is going to be card number one. So let's set that aside and come back to our other panel. So I also have the Thanks die that I also picked up from Simon Says Stamp, and our rainbow distress background has dried. Again, I am pulling in some of that black into these rainbow backgrounds because I really just love how striking the black and rainbow colors work so well together. So again, I'm just dotting on some of that glue right onto the back. Now this paper, I probably could have used a tape runner, but it had bowed just a little bit because remember, I was not using watercolor paper. So I just want to make sure that this lays down flat. So that's the reason I went for my wet adhesive. Again, it gives me a little bit of wiggle room to move around that gorgeous rainbow panel. Now, once that's done, I can go ahead and work from the center out and push out any extra glue I might have. In this case, I didn't have any because I used the little dots. And then I would go ahead and place on that thanks. Now, I sometimes like to make cards and not really know what I want to use them for, but I know I always need thank you cards or thanks cards. So I can put this thanks on here and think about adding an extra sentiment underneath it a little bit later. And I do that a lot. I might start with a card with a big sentiment on it, set it aside, and then come back a little bit later and figure out how I want to use that card. But I'll put that thanks right in the middle, what gives me enough room to add like a little strip sentiment underneath from maybe the tiny words stamp sets from Simon Says Stamp. It gives me an opportunity to add just another sentiment underneath it. I do want to add a little bit of bling to this, but I don't want to go overboard. So I'm just going to use some sparkly sequins. Again, I don't want to use color sequins because I don't want it to compete with my background. Now, if I wanted to, I could totally go overboard with every single color of the rainbow with my sequins. But again, I wanted to keep this focused on the background and not really the embellishments. So I just have a couple of these clear sequins. Again, I'll list everything in the description box below. And I'll go ahead and place those down. Now I do have a background playlist for any kind of background you might want to make for your cards. And I'll go ahead and link that above so you can check that out. All right, so this is card number 2. Let's get on to the last one. Now I went ahead and I ran that transfer gel through my machine and just layered it with that beautiful foil. Again, this is the Rainbow Shattered Glass foil. And I ran that the same way I did with the toner sheets right through that machine, my laminator. All right, so I went ahead and trimmed that down. Again, I'm going to have some areas that are white that did not catch the foil. Again, a nice distressed look. And I'm using black cardstock again. As you can tell, there's like a theme going here with the black cardstock. But again, I so love the way black and rainbows work together. Now you can use gray, or if you wanted to keep it like really, really happy colors, you can put matching underneath, matching color cardstock. I could do purple, blue, magenta on this one. But again, I really like that black. It just makes everything else pop. So I'm going to trim that down just a little bit more because I just want the black to kind of frame out that gorgeous panel that we're working with. Now, again, I'm going to use that wet medium to get this onto the back. Again, I probably could have used just some tape, but anytime you're using this transfer gel, I kind of find that it doesn't warp the paper that much, but it might be a little bit uneven because it is a wet medium going onto regular cardstock. So I just prefer to use the wet medium on this or the wet glue. Now I use my grid mat to help me line that up. And look how gorgeous that is. Oh, it just screams happiness to me. And again, that black just grounds the color. So you can see here where there's some areas that did not catch the foil. And that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted a little bit of a distressed look. Now, I also have another double layered sentiment here. And this one as well is from Simon Says Stamp. So as you can see, I love their little word dies that have like the little halo behind them. And I'll use that wet glue. Now, I do want to say on the first 2 dies that you saw, I did double up the white sentiment 3 times. On this one here, I didn't bother. I don't want a lot of depth to this one, so I just die cut that You the Best out 1 time. I did not make it extra thick. Now, since I have that on there, I can go ahead and grab my tweezers. And my tweezers are really just going to help me align this onto that black cardstock. Now, there's a lot of companies who now do this backdrop, and I just think it's so stunning because you can do it with vellum, you can do it with color cardstock, or in my case here, I love mounting the white onto the black. But you can totally do it in reverse and die cut out the word in black and then have your background as white. But look how gorgeous this looks on this card, and it really does not take away from all of that sparkle in the background. Again, I think doing this like this and making some of that black stand out with all the distress, you could totally give this to a male card giver or a male person rather, and not feel like it's too girly girly. So again, I used that Nuvo glue just to put some of that onto the back, and then I can press down "You the best." And again, it's a simple sentiment on a very striking background. Now to put this together, I always use, or I shouldn't say always use, the majority of the time I use Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I buy it by the ream full rather, cut it down, and it sits in a bottom drawer off to the left side of my desk, perfect for when I need to make my cards. I'll use my grid mat to help me line this up. And I did trim it down so that I have more white on the top and the bottom of this card compared to the left and the right sides. I just thought that gave it a little bit of variation. All right, and that is our 3 distressed rainbow background cards for today. If you guys like this video, please make sure to like, swipe, share, and also comment and tell me what kind of rainbow card you like the best. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today, and I will see you guys in another video soon. Until then, take care. Bye-bye, everybody.